we were quickly trying to decide which way we were going to leave, but we were still kind of trying to figure it out. It was just very confusing at the time. Then all of a sudden, we start seeing a tremendous amount of people running, and we decided, okay, we can't be last out. So we started running, and all of a sudden, when we were about to hit the exit, I remember the entire floor just shaking, and that's when the plane went through World Trade Center 2.
You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
So it all started in 1999. I interned at Morgan Stanley, and it was a great time because during that time it was the era of technology stocks, and the market was on a tremendous run. So I fell in love with the industry. That was 1999. 2000, graduated from University of Miami. My goal was always to become an attorney, and but I kept getting a call from someone at Morgan Stanley. At the time, it was Dean Witter, Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. And they wanted me to come back into the business and go into their training program. And so I decided to give law school a year, did great, but then I pivoted into the industry, and it was the best decision ever. So the firm would put us up for 3 weeks, and it was the best program out on Wall Street by far. And so we went up to New York for 3 weeks. That morning, I believe there were some elections in the city, so it was quiet. You didn't really see a lot of police officers out on the street. And so we would typically get to the World Trade Center via bus, I want to say by 7:15. So at the time, Philip Roth, which was our chief technician at the firm, so he was the person in charge of just teaching us about charts for the market. And so he ended his session a bit early, and at the time, my very good friend, Bill Van Scoyoc, was our MTA, which is the person in charge of the program. And he said, we have 20 minutes, make sure you get some coffee, and don't leave the building, because the session's going to start very soon, and you don't want to be late, because if you're late, pretty much you're gone. I mean, they were pretty strict. But at the time, we wanted to take a break. It was my first time alone in the city, so I wanted to take a look at what the city had to offer. So I just went downstairs with a couple of folks to go grab a cup of coffee. And so when we went downstairs, that's when we walked out of the turning doors. We walked out, and that's when somebody which was walking by, it was bizarre, someone with a book bag, a young person walking with a book bag, said, get back in the building, get back in the building. And at that time, you started to see that there was debris coming down, and it was because the first plane went through World Trade Center 1.
And is that the tower you had been in?
I was in World Trade Center 2.
You were in 2?
Yeah. So we start running back into the building, and half of us are going one way, and the other half are going the other way, and then some of the debris was falling onto the building and was hitting some of the folks that were behind us. And I just remember looking back, and it was either a piece of the building or the plane, just completely flattened out a taxi cab across the street, and that's when I knew that there was a major issue. The person we were trying to get back into the building, but one person we were pushing this way, and another group were pushing that way. Everyone was panicking. And so the guy in front of us started punching through the glass to try to get us in. And he finally punched through, we got in, and just mass confusion. And I remember my roommate at the time stating, that was a plane. I heard a plane going through, hitting the building. And I said to him, Alan, planes aren't allowed to fly around, that close to the buildings. That had to be a generator or helicopter maybe hitting the building, but it was the plane. And what's interesting there is that at the time, I left everything upstairs. I mean, my phone, wallet, and I I told my roommate, I have to go upstairs. I have to go grab my stuff, all my personal belongings up there. And he said, no, don't do that. I'm like, I'll be right back. So I walk up to security, and they're like, well, there was an accident, World Trade Center 1, you're cleared, we're safe, you can go upstairs, take the elevator up. And he pulled me aside again. He said, look, do me a favor, please. If you're going to go upstairs, you have to say a prayer with me. And I've known him for, I think, 48 hours. And I didn't want to be rude, so I said, okay, I'll do it, fine. I was more concerned about my personal belongings and being late to class, right? So he grabbed my hand, said a prayer, and I don't know what it was, but something just completely changed my mind, and I decided to stay. And so as I reflect on it throughout the years, if I would have taken that elevator up, right, because you connect on the 61st, I believe at the time we were on 64, I probably would have been in the elevator shaft when the second plane hit.
So what did you do after you decided not to go back up?
We were just trying to figure out what the next move was. We were still confused because we knew something happened outside, and but inside it was calm, and security again was very assertive that everything was fine. But then all of a sudden we started seeing folks running downstairs and panicking and running out of the building, and that's when we decided that, look, we need to get back to the hotel. Something doesn't seem right. And so we started quickly walking through the lobby of the World Trade. We were still in World Trade Center 2, and we're in the lobby, and we're walking out, and all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of folks running. And I'm assuming that all these folks were seeing what was happening in World Trade Center 1, and so took the emergency exit and just wanted to get out of the building. So we started walking a bit. We were quickly trying to decide which way we were going to leave, but we were still kind of trying to figure it out. It was just very confusing at the time. Then all of a sudden, we start seeing a tremendous amount of people running, and we decided, okay, we can't be last out. So we started running. And all of a sudden, when we were about to hit the exit, I remember the entire floor just shaking. And that's when the plane went through World Trade Center 2. I remember running out, and the first thing I did was I stopped and I looked up. And that's when I first saw both towers on fire, engulfed in fire at the top.
And was there more debris coming down because of that
There
second
was.
impact?
Yeah, and so I ran across the street, and I looked up, and it looked like it was snowing from all the paperwork from the two towers. They were just all coming down slowly. It was amazing. And I remember across the street there was a work van, and had the AM radio was all the way up. And so I'm listening to it while I'm observing what was happening. And the person on the radio was stating that he thought it was an attack, a terrorist attack, because two airliners went through both towers. And but I remember just everyone running out of the towers. Pure panic, people running over people, just trying to get away. So it was an astounding moment. And so I was observing what was happening. So the towers were on fire. And then unfortunately seeing folks jumping off the building.
You witnessed that?
Yes, yeah. And I'll never forget someone standing next to me saying, "Look at them jump out like flies. They're jumping out like flies." And so I was still in the background. That working van was there, and that AM radio was all the way up. And I remember one of the comments that they made was, "Look, those are two jets that went through the building, and I'm sure there's a significant amount of fuel in those towers." And at that moment, I decided that I needed to leave. I didn't know what to expect. I don't know if the building was going to explode, whether it was going to melt down, but I wanted to seek shelter. And so the firm, at the time, the training class was divided into two different hotels. And I decided I'm not taking the subway, I'm not getting in the cab, I'm just going to run all the way up to Lexington. I think it was around 55th.
It's a good hike.
Shelbourne. Yeah, it's a hike. But at the time, I wanted to find a payphone to call home to let everybody know that I was fine.
What is your mind even able to process the reality of watching people jump from the windows?
To this day, I still reflect on that, and it's a tough moment for me because, especially on the anniversary every year, on that date, I reflect, and sometimes I ask why me? Why was I spared and other folks not? So very difficult. Just seeing folks making the decision whether they were going to unfortunately burn alive or to jump. But after that, after listening to the work van, I decided I needed to call back home because I'm sure that my family was watching it on TV, and I know that they thought that I had passed away.
Is that what they told you when you called?
Yes. My mother, my stepfather at the time, and the reason why I wanted to become an attorney was because he was an attorney by trade back in his home country in Colombia. And he walked into my mom's office and said, "Are you seeing what's happening on the news?" And she said, he's in that World Trade Center. And she's like, I can't believe what I'm seeing, and you know that's not what I want to see. And he said, "Don't worry about it. I'm sure I know him. He found a way to get out. Pure luck." But I'm really glad that I called. I was able to find a payphone, and the line was very long, very, very long, because all towers were down, telecommunication towers were down. And so I'm happy I called because once my mother saw what was happening on TV, she picked up the phone and she called the local branch in Florida that I was working out of. And she asked for the manager. The manager was conducting a sales meeting at the time. He exits the sales meeting, gets on the phone with my mother, and she said, "Are you watching what's happening on the news?" And he was briefed, and he said, "Don't worry about your son. I know exactly where he is." This is right after the first plane went through. He said, "Don't worry. I know exactly where your son is. He's on World Trade Center 2, the other building, and he's right in the middle of the tower. That's where we have our classes." Hangs up. She has a sense of relief that she knows that I'm in the other tower. And then a couple of minutes later, then the plane went right through the second World Trade Center, and that's why she thought I had passed away. So I'm very happy that I was able to make a collect call and got in touch with her and just put them at ease. I can remember to this day, I hang up the payphone because there was a big line behind me. Hang up the payphone, wish the person behind me good luck. I started running up the block. I kept looking back. I want to say 3 minutes into 3 minutes after that phone call, the first tower went down.
What are you thinking?
Thinking about all the people that passed away.
At that point, you had no idea if the rest of your class had made it out.
Correct. Fight or flight, and it was at that moment flight, and I wanted to get back to the hotel as quickly as possible. And but just thinking of all the folks that my peers, other folks at Morgan Stanley, and just everyone in general, just devastating moment. And it took me a while to get back to the hotel, but once I got back to the hotel, that's when I had that overwhelming feeling of sadness, because for the first time in my life, I walked into this hotel and some of my peers that I had spent the last 2 days with were all crying and hysterically, and couldn't keep their emotions in check because they thought that they were going to die. It was later on that night. There was a briefing, and that's when they told us that the class was fine. So we had over 300 trainees in that class. Again, largest in Morgan Stanley history for wealth management, and so made us very happy, which was a sign of hope. Although it was one of the most difficult moments in the history of our country. New Yorkers always think that there's hope. They fight for their cause, tough, demanding, but yet at the same time, extremely supportive throughout the entire event. Just seeing the way that the country rallied was incredible. And we've said this before, but we'd love to see the country, act like that, united all the time. For many years, it was very difficult for me to talk about it. And again, it went back to the premise of why me? And so after a couple of years, I started to feel a bit more comfortable sharing the story with family members. It took me a while. And but as every year went on, I felt more compelled to share my story, which is one of hope. One of the things that I really enjoy is when I meet someone new, they'll give me some feedback sometimes in a business setting or just new friends. If we move from one city to another, like, you're always in a good mood, right? You're always in a good mood. And if I don't know them that well, I just tell them, life is short, blessed with a wonderful family. I've always worked at one firm, and life is good. But as I get to know the person and close family friends and colleagues, now they know that the reason why I'm always optimistic and the glass is always half full is because I'm on borrowed time. I shouldn't be here.